Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Hunger Games Iceberg. I noticed nobody has ever made one that I could find on YouTube, so I thought, why not be the first? This iceberg will include theories, incidents, deep lore, and more. And some of these YouTube fans will probably know, and this is kind of made for more casual fans or people just getting into the series. So if you're studying, at work, or just want to listen and while doing something else, then just relax, and I hope you enjoy. Layer 1. Every known victor. As of Sunrise on the Reaping, this is every known victor from the series described in the books and the movies from earliest to most recent. Lucy Gray, Mags Flanagan, Wolf, Cedar, Beatty Latier, Porter Millicent Tripp, Brutus, Chaff, Palladium Barker, Wyrus, Hamish Abernathy, Lime, Blight, Cecilia, Enobaria, Gloss, Cashmere, Finnick, Augustus Braun, Annie Crasta, Joanna Mason, the unnamed boy from District 2, Katniss and Peeta, and there are 8 others that we never get to learn the names of or even see their faces in the third quarter Quell. Seymour Hoffman passing away. In the middle of filming Mockingjay Part 2, Plutarch Heavensbee actor Seymour Hoffman passed away on February 2, 2014 from an apparent drug overdose, leaving many scenes unfinished with him and him being such a major character, and that's why we don't really see him towards the end of the movie, which he was supposed to originally. And it's unfortunate, and may he rest in peace. Jennifer Lawrence gives Josh Hutcherson a concussion. While filming the first Hunger Games, Jennifer Lawrence and Josh Hutcherson were playfully shadowboxing off-camera, where Jennifer Lawrence accidentally kicked Josh so hard in the temple that it gave him a concussion and knocked him out briefly, but he ended up being okay. Mockingjay Part 2 promotion lore. To promote the second part of Mockingjay, a website was made, and on this website we were showing 2 unknown and never before mentioned winners of the Hunger Games, Porter Millicent Tripp, who won the 38th Games, and Augustus Braun, who won the 67th Games. We get to learn some other lore about them, and I will talk about that later, but one of the coolest things is we got to see what Mags Flanagan looked like when she won. Most expensive gift ever sent into the arena. We learned that in the books, the viewers of the Capitol, called sponsors, can send in items into the games. Most of the time it's just food or medicine, but we learned that one of the most expensive items ever sent to a tribute was Finnick Odair's trident in the 65th Games. The original third quarter Quell plan. This is probably the most infamous unanswered question that we have in the Hunger Games. In Catching Fire, in a deleted scene, we see Plutarch Heavensbee head down into a building where the quarter Quell twists are being held upon being revealed, and Plutarch opens the third quarter Quell door and burns the original plan and replaces it with the new one. And the question is what would it have even been? We will never know. Christian Blanco. Christian Blanco is a YouTuber who made his own fanfiction series of every winner of the Hunger Games, and even made an alternate timeline where the Hunger Games continued after the third quarter Quell rebellion plan failed. And I could not find any of his videos while recording for this. I don't know where they went, but he took them all down. But they were all very well written and well liked by the community. In the middle of editing this video, he did put them all back up on his channel. So if you want to go watch him, you can, and I'll put them in the description. Foxface's death argument. In the first book and movie, we learn of a tribute from District 5 named Foxface, and while we do not know much about her, it is inferred by Katniss that she is very smart and possibly the smartest tribute in that year's games. Toward the end of the games, Katniss and Peeta discover Foxface dead after appearing to eat a handful of nightlock berries which were poisonous, so they killed her, and that is where the argument starts, because it is a huge question on if Foxface knew that these berries were poisonous or not, and if she did she do it so she didn't have to kill anyone, or was it just an easier way to go out and die? And the reason why people think that she did know that they were poisonous is because in the training scene, she is seen working on some sort of plant-based game, where it's either matching or memory, we don't really know, but it is inferred that she knew what the berries were. Peeta's leg injury difference. In the books, Peeta loses a leg after being slashed deeply by Cato's sword, and this really affected Peeta in the third quarter Quell, but in the movies, Peeta never loses his leg, and it really bothered me and fans because it really affected him in the third quarter Quell, just moving around, which is described in the books. And then Peeta goes on to kill Brutus, and, Brutus is a massive dude, so it just doesn't seem realistic that Peeta could have killed him. Beatty Latier's sons. In Sunrise on the Reaping, Haymitch meets Beatty Latier, winner of the 34th Hunger Games, and due to his own actions of trying to sabotage the capital's communication systems, Beatty's own son Amperant was inferred to have been illegally reaped into the second court of Quell, where he later died. But very briefly towards the end of the book, it is mentioned that the only reason Beatty did not end himself after his son's death was because Beatty had another son on the way. And what is odd is we never get to know or see a second son at any point, even in the main two movies. And it makes you question if he was also illegally reaped into future games, and how did he die, or did he die in the rebellion? And we may never get to know the answer. Layer 2. Augustus Braun. Augustus Braun was a District 1 male who won the 67th Hunger Games. We do not know how he won, but we do know that he was very popular with the citizens for being so patriotic for Panem, and was nicknamed the Cavalier Courier and Panem's favorite son. Porter Millicent Tripp. We learn Porter Millicent Tripp won the 38th Hunger Games after she and her opponent fell from a great height off a cliff. Her opponent died first, declaring her the winner, and she had such a severe spinal injury that she had to wear a halo brace during the entire victory tour, and unfortunately she never recovered fully, and it always affected her throughout her life. How many victors survived in the end? Toward the end of Mockingjay Part 2, during a meeting with President Coin mentions that everyone in the room are the only remaining victors still alive, so assuming everyone else was killed off in the war or died of old age or any other means, the only winners to truly survive the Hunger Games are Katniss, Peeta, Haymitch, Annie Cresta, Beatty Latier, Enobaria, and Joanna Mason. How the others won their games. Although it is unknown how most of the winners won the Hunger Games, we are shown or told brief glimpses on how, so here are just how some of the lesser known characters won their games. Beatty Latier won his games by electrocuting 6 tributes at once with a coil. Joanna Mason won by acting weak in her interviews and training, and then once it got later into the games, she switched to her violent side and killed everyone off with an axe. Annie Cresta won her games after her arena, which had a dam, broke, and she outlasted everyone, being the best swimmer. Porter Millicent Tripp, as mentioned before, outlasted the other tribute after falling off a cliff. It is unknown how the rest of Enobaria's games went, but we do know that she won after ripping the throat out of the final tribute with her teeth. Wyrus won after she figured out her mirror arena and used it against the final tribute, who jumped out at her thinking that it was her and smashed into a mirror and drowned in a lake. The unnamed boy from District 2, who won the 73rd games, won after smashing in the head of the final tribute with a brick. We do not know how Chaff won his games, but we can infer that he lost his hand in the final fight. Gloss and Cashmere are siblings. Catching Fire, Katniss meets Gloss and Cashmere, brother and sister from District 1, who were reaped into the 75th games. What is odd about this is that they are both from career districts, meaning that they both volunteered to go back into the games, knowing that only one of them could come out, but their brother and sister. Which leads to the idea that they were both reaped from a drawing and not volunteered. Peeta kills Brutus. We learned that in Mockingjay, Peeta killed Brutus in the third quarter Quell after Katniss and Peeta were separated, but fans have really questioned how realistic that was, seeing as 1, Peeta has a prosthetic leg in the books, and 2, Brutus is a massive human being compared to Peeta. We never learn how he did it, but from a hand-to-hand combat scenario, it just seems very unrealistic that Peeta would have won. Ballad Games ending. In the movie Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, Lucy Gray wins after the snakes sent in, attack, and kill everyone except Lucy, making her the winner. But in the books, the ending is very different. The snakes do appear, but they do not play as much of a threat as they do in the movies, and Lucy wins after she tires out the final tribute Reaper, and he goes to drink water which Lucy had poisoned, and he dies a slow death, making her the winner. Cecilia's Sad Fate. Cecilia is one of the winners of the Hunger Games between the 50th and 62nd games. We learned that in Catching Fire, Cecilia has 3 young children she had to leave at home after being reaped for the third quarter Quell, in which she later died in. While it's likely that other troops had children as well, Cecilia is the only known tribute to have children other than Beatty, and unfortunately they had to watch her die. Mag's Sea Monster Theory. While we do not know anything about Mag's Hunger Games, it is inferred that her Hunger Games was the first ever arena to be built outside after the first 10 Hunger Games being held in the same small enclosure was destroyed. It is theorized though that Mag's games were held in some sort of water-based environment, as in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes ending, which is set between the 10th and 11th games, the ones that Mags competed in. Professor Gall shows Coriolanus Snow a squid-like monster that seems to be inferring that it was going to be used in the next year's arena, because in that same room is where the snakes used in the 10th games were held and other small animals, Katniss's parents' names. This simply just refers to the fact that we never learned the names of Katniss's parents ever, only being referred to as Mom or Miss Everdeen. This was true until the newest book, Sunrise on the Reaping, where we learned that Haymitch was best friends with Katniss's father and knew her mom, Astrid March and Burdock Everdeen. Layer 3. The elevator scene. So you know that scene in Catching Fire where Joanna strips naked on the elevator in front of Katniss, Peeta, and Haymitch? Well, that scene was shot in an Atlanta hotel and it was not closed off for production, and Jenna really was nude, and it's even rumored that the filming assistant pressed the wrong button to the wrong floor, and hotel guests were shocked to see a nude Joanna Mason. Filming locations. In case you were curious where the films were filmed, they were all filmed between North Carolina, Hawaii, Atlanta, Berlin, and Paris. Sam Claflin and Liam Hemsworth injuries. The only known major injuries the actors suffered was Sam Claflin breaking his finger on Catching Fire and Chris Hemsworth breaking his ankle, which postponed production for a month. Seneca Crane's beard. So you know how Seneca Crane and the Capitol Citizens have unbelievably over-the-top hairstyles and facial hair? Well, Seneca Crane's fabulous beard was actually real and not anything fake. Just thought that was really cool. The Iraq War caused the Hunger Games. You did not hear me wrong. Author Suzanne Collins said in an interview that the Iraq War inspired her to write The Hunger Games after flipping between news coverage of the war and game shows on TV. 1,795. 1,795 is the amount of tributes that died in the entirety of The Hunger Games from all 75 games. And an extra fun fact, Brutus was the final death in The Hunger Games. Haymitch's post-game realization. After Haymitch Abernathy won the second quarter Quell, President Snow killed his mom, his younger brother, and his girlfriend, and then he was forced to become a mentor, and in all 23 games before Katniss and Peeta, he had to watch 46 kids die. The Reapings are rigged theory. This theory talks about how the random drawings for the tributes of the games are rigged in order for narratives, storylines, and punishments for the games to draw in more attention. The main point of this theory comes from the abundant amount of tributes who had siblings or friends selected. Beatty Latier and his sons, Panache Barker and his brother Palladium Barker, President Snow changing the third quarter Quell so Katniss would be thrown into the games again. Lucy Gray being picked was confirmed to be rigged. People also point out the bowls in the Reapings, which seem to be unusually small for thousands of names, and that's not even including the Tesserae rule, where citizens can put their names more than once. District 12's peacekeepers are chill. It is theorized that the reason why the peacekeepers in District 12 are so calm and chill compared to the other districts is because they know that District 12 citizens are so poor and malnourished to ever fight back. Katniss was even friends with a peacekeeper named Darius, showing that they didn't despise everyone and did not have to fear the citizens. Layer 4. Finnick was illegally reaped. As we know, Finnick Odair was the youngest winner in Hunger Games history at 14 years old, but what some people question is did he even volunteer to go in or was he reaped? We know District 4 is a career district, so many tributes from there volunteer themselves, but most 14-year-olds are very undersized and weak compared to the usual winners in careers. So it is theorized that the other tributes of District 4 saw Finnick's future potential as a career, so they planned to have Finnick be reaped by name drawing so he could die before he hits his peak. I do personally believe that this theory is true because the younger people that were going to eventually volunteer probably saw him and realized the threat that he posed to their future chances at becoming a career. Who would have won the third quarter Quell? One of the biggest debates in the Hunger Games fandom is who would have won the third quarter Quell if the rebel plan failed or never even happened. While everything would have played out very differently, the most likely candidates, in my opinion, would be between Finnick, Katniss, Joanna, and Enobaria. And I think Finnick probably is my favorite in general because the arena was most closely based on his district, so he would know how to survive in that kind of circumstances. But I think Joanna is another great choice because of how violent she is. Beetee hates Enobaria. This is personally my favorite theory in the entirety of the Hunger Games, so just hear me out. So Beetee Latier, he's known for just kind of doing his own thing, not trash talking any of the other winners of the games, except Enobaria, who he calls a psychopath. Now, this theory might explain why he does that. So as I mentioned earlier, Beetee Latier is one of the very many winners of the Hunger Games, and as I mentioned earlier as well, Beetee lost one of his sons, Ampert, in the 50th Games as punishment, but towards the end of the book, it is mentioned that Beetee has another son on the way. Now, we don't know anything about Beetee's second son, but we do know that he was born after the 50th Games, and guess whose games took place 12 years after the 50th games? That's right, it was Inobaria. So theories go that Beatty's second son was reaped at the age of 12, and the final person that Inobaria killed by ripping out their throat with her teeth was Beatty's second son. PETA tried to self-delete before the 74th games. It is theorized that PETA tried to jump off the roof in the holding quarters before the 74th Hunger Games. This comes from the fact that PETA somehow knew about the force field on the roof, and in Catching Fire mentions the force of the arena force field was much stronger than the quarters force field. It also makes sense as to why he gave a small monologue to Katniss the night before about the 74th games and not wanting to be a part of the Capitol's games. Why Inobaria filed her teeth down theory. Inobaria, one of the most beloved winners in the Hunger Games ever, won her games by ripping her opponent's throat out with her teeth. After she won, she got her teeth filed down, assumingly as a tribute and reminder to how she won the games. But some people tend to think that she did this for a much more sad reason. It is heavily inferred that President Snow would sell the winners of the games to the Capitol citizens for dirty deeds, and to keep people away from her, she had her teeth filed down to make her less desirable. Wyatt Callow's dad set Haymitch's home on fire. This theory basically says that Wyatt Callow's dad set the Abernathy home on fire, declared his debt on losing Wyatt's bet, and then was killed by the Capitol to keep it from getting out on what actually happened. Now, I don't personally believe this theory, but this one had a lot of likes and I just had to throw it in here. The ball incident. In the first book, Katniss mentions a girl in the Hunger Games who, while on the podium before the games began, dropped her token, a wooden ball, by accident. Once the ball hit the ground of the arena, the bomb under her podium blew her up. What is interesting about this is a huge majority of fans seem to recall this scene from the books and movies happening in the 74th games, but it never appears anywhere, and it is probably the biggest Mandela effect in the series. The Cannibal Tribute. Katniss mentions a boy from District 6 named Titus, who in an unknown games, assumingly due to the little amount of food in the snow-based arena, became infamous for eating other dead tributes. The Capitol, seeing this, triggered an avalanche to kill him, as the cannibalism likely would not sit well with citizens if he had won. The many changes between the book and movie. As I mentioned previously, there are many changes between the books and the movies. The biggest changes, though, are the following. Katniss gets the Mockingjay pin from her friend Madge undersea in the book versus from finding it in the Hob in the movies. Lucy Gray poisoning Reaper to win the games instead of the snakes killing off everyone else like they do in the movies. PETA losing his legs in the books versus not losing it in the movies. Clove dies by getting her head smashed in by a rock by Thresh, whereas in the movies Thresh slams Clove against the cornucopia. The swear jar. Yeah, this one really isn't that deep, but on the set of the Hunger Games, the cast had a swear jar off screen, and whoever cursed the most had to put $1 in, and by far Jennifer Lawrence had to fill it up the most. The final layer. Plutarch sabotaged every Hunger Games. It is a popular theory that Plutarch Heavensby attempted to sabotage every Hunger Games to make the game makers look like an undesirable job. He did this so by the time that they found a Mockingjay, he could easily step in and take the role as the game maker so he can control the third quarter Quell to help the rebels rescue the tributes and escape the arena. Burdock was killed as punishment for Haymitch. In the first Hunger Games book, we learn that Katniss's father Burdock was killed in a mine explosion. We find out in Sunrise on the Reaping that Haymitch was friends with Katniss's father Burdock, and it is theorized that President Snow killed Burdock because after Snow killed everyone off that Haymitch loved or was friends with, that he wanted him to be alone for life. District 8 hospital helper. Yeah, you guys know that YouTuber Moist Critical, or known as Penguin Zero? Well, he actually appears in Mockingjay Part 1, and you can see him specifically in this scene, and you can see his hand. And it has become a running gag with the Hunger Games community, and himself as well, and his fans, and it's just kind of funny. But that's about it. See ya. The blood test. There is a short theory that the reason why they prick their fingers and take every kid's blood before the reaping is to find any descendants of Lucy Gray and send them into the Hunger Games to be killed, and perhaps in hope that one day Lucy will try and save them or just return to the district, and hence why Snow kept all the electric fences off as well. Katniss was a career tribute. While it sounds crazy at first, a underfed girl from the poorest district being a career, well, here's how this takes a turn. So we know that Katniss was taught by her father how to hunt and shoot a bow, and Katniss became incredibly skilled with it, and she learned how to survive at a young age on her own, how to hunt animals, and then she volunteered where she later won. While she's not an official career, she is an unofficial one. The third quarter Quell was supposed to have no winner. It is theorized that the third quarter Quell was supposed to have no winners as punishment for the 74th games having two, Katniss and PETA. Also, so that the citizens would not feel any connection to the favorite tributes, and to know that not even Panem's stars are safe, and all of the other tributes knew about Snow's dark secrets, Finnick especially, so it makes total sense to me. District 11 is a failed career district. So we know that districts 1, 2, and 4 are labeled as career districts. And careers, as we know, are tributes that train from a young age to eventually volunteer and fight in the arena. And from what we've seen is every other non-career district are really just skinny, small, underfed kids, except District 11. Noticeably, the males from District 11 are very massive tributes, including Thresh from the 74th Hunger Games, who is 6'6" and looked very fit. We also see Reaper from the 10th Hunger Games, who is also a very massive and violent boy. And in Sunrise on the Reaping, Hamish describes the 2 District 11 boys, Hole and Tile, as very large tributes, who even declined to join the career pack. So people tend to theorize that they were, at one point, maybe a career district, but because of how untrained they were from birth, they just weren't as good, so they were kind of just thrown out compared to 1, 2, and 4. The next Hunger Games book. Although it's not confirmed as of October 2025, it is presumed that Suzanne Collins will eventually write another Hunger Games book, but the question is who or what will it even be about? Now, in my opinion, I think the 2 most likely things it'll be about is Finnick Odair or the unknown winner of the first quarter Quell. Now, I think Finnick Odair is pretty clear why he would be chosen. 1, he is a fan favorite from the series, and 2, it would be the first time we ever get a perspective from the career side of the Hunger Games. And then we would get to see what happened to him after. Then we have the second quarter Quell, which we have little to no information on other than that it was the first quarter Quell and the tributes were voted in the games by their own districts. I think that would make for a very good drama and potentially ruthless tributes getting sent in because they're either the strongest tributes or they're the most hated in their own district. So I think it would be really interesting to see that play out. And then one of the reasons why we may not even know what happened is maybe there was another rebel plot in the 25th quarter Quell, because we've seen one in the 50th in Hamish's games and then the 75th games. The rest of the world exists. While it's never explained what happened to the world after the disasters happened, it is presumed that the other countries of the world were killed off and then they were just left with Panem left as the only landmass in the world. But there are theories that they did not die off, and after seeing how dangerous Panem was and evil, they stayed hidden and did not communicate with them. But there is never any mention of any other country existing, so this is what we're kind of going based off of. Fan films. I thought I'd leave you guys off with a couple of fan films to continue watching some Hunger Games content, but the most well-known fan films are Finnick Odair's The 65th Hunger Games by Joshua Chislet, which I showed footage of earlier, and The Hunger Games The Second Quarter Quell by Mainstay Pro. And these are both very well written and made, and there are many other great ones, and I will leave them in the description. And that leads us to the end of this video and Iceberg. Thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like, subscribe if you'd like, and if you have any theories or other things you want to mention, leave them down in the comments.